A sad modern-day deportation case. Hi, I'm Jim Hacking, immigration lawyer practicing law throughout the United States out of our offices in St. Louis, San Diego, Washington, D.C., and Chicago, Illinois. I've been practicing law since 1997, and I've been an immigration lawyer since 2008. In 2012, we decided to just do immigration, and for a while we did deportation, but after some time we decided that deportation was hard, stressful. It made us sad a lot when we worked on those cases, so we sort of slowed down our deportation practice. Pretty much weren't taking any new cases for the last couple of years of the Biden administration. But when Donald Trump came back into office, we started thinking about, well, there's a real need here. We're really good lawyers, and we could start deportation up again. And I've had a case that I've been working on the last 3 weeks. I want to talk to you about it. I'm probably not going to edit this video. It's not going to be very stylized. It's just going to be me talking from the heart about what I've experienced as an immigration lawyer, what I've seen in the deportation world now that we're back in the machine, and that we're going to explain to you sort of what's going on and what you can expect, what we're seeing. And I hope you like the video. Gary Vaynerchuk says that I don't necessarily need to create new content. I just need to document the journey. And that's what this video is about. This video is about documenting where we are in 2025 when it comes to asylum cases in detention. And so let me begin by telling you the story. I was contacted about 3 weeks ago by a family of a young man who worked at a restaurant in St. Charles, Missouri. So that's sort of an exurb of St. Louis. And he had been living in a house with a bunch of other people and working at a restaurant, a Chinese buffet. And he was originally from Indonesia. He had come to the United States several years ago. He filed an asylum application, and I'm not going to go into the details of the asylum application just to keep that confidential. But he had an asylum case that was pending. The USCIS gave him work authorization. He had always followed the rules, had never broken any criminal laws, and he was just here doing his thing, working. And apparently some of the neighbors in St. Charles noticed that there seemed to be a lot of people with brown skin living in this house together. An abnormal number of people were living in this house. And so they called the police called the FBI, and FBI called ICE. And about 3 weeks ago, early one morning, they raided the house. This was on September 1st, September 2nd, so right around in there, right at the beginning of the month. So about 4 weeks ago. And so ICE raided the house, and it turns out there were two houses where a lot of people were living, and they grabbed everyone that was living there and brought them downtown to St. Louis and began processing them for immigration detention. This was true even though the people had work authorization, even though the people had asylum applications. Immigration Customs Enforcement began deportation proceedings, and after a few days, they gave them what's called a notice to appear in immigration court. That's an NTA, which outlines why you are deportable, why you are not a U.S. citizen, and why, under the law, you have overstayed your visa or you have not maintained your status, and that you are therefore deportable from the United States. And so this client, the first client that I got, was being held in a place called the St. Genevieve Detention Center. So here in St. Louis, we don't have a formal immigration detention center. What they do is they farm immigrants facing deportation who are in detention out to various local jails. So St. Genevieve, Montgomery County, Mississippi County, all these places are where immigrants are detained waiting for their immigration court date. So I went down to the jail, and by that time I had been contacted by another family. So we had two clients that we got retained to hire to represent, to try to get their family member out on bond. And while I was down there, I learned that in fact there were 14 or 15 people from Indonesia all working at this restaurant. There had been Mexicans living in the houses. There were all kinds of people living in the houses. So I understand how this got on the government's radar and how this all started. But as you'll see, the story is very, very sad, I think. I guess there'll be some Trump people who'll be really happy with this story, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So went down, met with my client. I liked him a lot. He had his family sign up to have us represent him, as did the second person. And we began getting to work. We began gathering the records of his asylum case. And we knew that in order to established that he was eligible for bond, that we needed to find a place for him to stay. And so we began working with his friends on the outside, and we located an individual who was willing to take this client in and let him stay with him, and promised to make sure that he attended all of his court hearings. There are also other ways that courts can make sure that somebody comes to immigration court, and the biggest ones of those are, of course, an ankle bracelet or a actual bond where you post money, maybe $1,500, maybe up to $15,000, that guarantees that you'll keep coming to court or you lose that money. So our clients were willing to do all those things. Well, while I was down there, I found out that, like I said, there were 14 of them, and eventually we ended up representing 10 of these Indonesian people who were seeking asylum in the United States in various ways. They had filed mostly on their own. Some had used a notario down in Florida, and I want to talk about that in a little bit. But in any event, they were all detained. They had various levels of being able to speak English. I eventually got a translator, which I found on Upwork. I was really excited about that, to find that translator. And I would meet with them once a week. I would go down on the weekends. I would get up early in the morning or late at night after Norris softball. I would drive down to the jail, and I met with the clients to get their story, to find out why they feared going back home to Indonesia, to find out who their family members or friends were that were willing to take them in, and to make sure that they attended immigration court if they were to be released on bond. I talked to a really good friend of mine, Ray. He's one of the best immigration attorneys in St. Louis, a great deportation lawyer. He was not that hopeful that this judge that we had, and one judge had all 10 cases, was going to allow our clients to get out on bond. But we worked really hard on the cases. We put together everything we could. We got all the evidence. We got all 10 motions for bond on file. And our clients were waiting for their day in court, and there was a bunch of machinations because the judge needed to find a court translator who spoke Indonesian, and so he decided to put them all onto one docket for this Tuesday or Wednesday. Anyway, I went to court. It was Wednesday. I went to court. I flew up to Kansas City, and we had 10. We had one earlier, but we basically had 10 bond hearings, and despite the fact that some of our clients had a lawful permanent resident brother, that they had been in the United States for 7 years, that they hadn't committed any kind of crime, all 10 of our clients had their bond motions denied. And so the way that it worked is the judge would have us go on the record, and I made my primary legal argument, which is still a legal issue that I think is relevant for this video and for the cases, and that is, the Board of Immigration Appeals has said that it is the burden of the respondent, of the immigrant, to demonstrate that they are eligible for bond, that the burden rests on the immigrant to show that they are not a flight risk, that they are not a danger to society, that they will show up to court. That's very strange. It's very, very strange for a couple of reasons. First of all, in the criminal context where we are, which is the Eighth Circuit, which is sort of the middle of the country, probably 5 or 6 states are in the Eighth Circuit. And in our circuit, for a criminal defendant, it's very, very clear that for a criminal defendant, if they want to get out on bond, they have to demonstrate, that the government has to demonstrate that the person is a flight risk or a danger to society and is not likely to show up for their immigration hearings in the future. So for criminals, it's on the government. But the Board of Immigration Appeals has said that it's on the immigrant. So there's a conflict there, right? So I began my argument by pointing out that I believe that based on the rule in the Eighth Circuit as it relates to criminal defendants, and as the First and Second Circuits have held, and a district judge in Minnesota held, that an immigrant is not the one who has to show the burden, has to meet the burden. It's the government that has to show that the immigrant is a flight risk. So it's really important when you're framing these things, who has the burden? Because if I have the burden as the immigration attorney, then I have to overcome the judge's skepticism. But if it's the government's burden, then they have to demonstrate it. So the judge let me make my argument each time on the record. We preserved it for appeal. He said that because the Board of Immigration Appeals has held the way that it has, and because there's no Eighth Circuit case that goes against that, that he was going to keep the burden on the immigrant. So that put us behind the 8 ball. But in any event, I went ahead and demonstrated that in 9 out of 10 of my cases, No one had a criminal record. One of the 10 people had a one crime case in Colorado that got resolved. It was a theft case. The judge did not like that. The judge did not like the fact that some of the applicants had filed for asylum more than 1 year after arrival. Now, generally, when it comes to bond, a judge is not supposed to inquire into the merits of the asylum case, but in this world we're living in now where they're trying to deport as many people as possible, and given the fact that generally the strength of an asylum case can be one factor in determining whether or not a immigrant is likely to show up for court and therefore eligible for bond, that is a rule. And so the judge, I would say, looked at the asylum cases, and if he saw fundamental defects in them, then he pointed that out on the record when the discussions of bond came out. The government attorney really didn't have to do that much. He just said, yeah, Judge, we think this person's a flight risk. They entered the United States here. They lived there. They got arrested in St. Louis, and they want to go live in Texas or North Dakota or Indiana or wherever. And they said that's not real significant ties. And truth be told, a lot of these clients hadn't been here all that long. So it's very different, and I explained it to my clients. It's very different than someone who's facing deportation, who's been here for 30 years, who has a house, a family, all those things. So I understand from that perspective, these clients didn't have the strongest of ties as compared to people who've been here for a very long time. But we believed that we had put together a really good case and that our clients had established that someone was willing to take them, they were willing to pay bond or to wear an ankle bracelet. All those things were true. In looking at the asylum cases, I did want to point out one thing, and that's this notario down in Florida. I have seen a lot of asylum applications filed by different kinds of people. Sometimes they're filed by friends. Sometimes they're filed by family members. Sometimes they're filed by lawyers. Sometimes they're filed by notarios, which are fake lawyers. And so there's fake lawyers down in Florida who have a really nice website, but they do a really shitty job on preparing an I-589, which is the asylum application. I swear to God, these things were the thinnest. Some of these were the thinnest asylum applications that I've ever seen. Now, I had another client, one of the 10, had hired an attorney, had filed asylum right on time, had done everything that they were supposed to do. It was a strong case, and the judge didn't even really look at that. He didn't even really care. So when he had the opportunity to beat me up for the clients who had thin cases, he did it, but it really didn't matter, I think, in his mind, because even the ones with strong asylum cases that were well documented, prepared by an attorney, he disregarded those as well. So all that being said, dude, do not use a notario. You get what you pay for. They literally said, why do you fear persecution? And they checked a box and they put one sentence as to why this person, one of my 10 clients, deserved asylum in the United States. When we do an asylum application, it's that thick. It's a long personal statement. It's detailed. It talks about past persecution. It talks about the threats of future persecution. This application was as bare bones as could be, and the client did get a work card, but this is the kind of thing that makes immigration judges mad, and it really hurt when I was trying to argue that this person should get bond in the United States, because the judge was like, your asylum case will never be granted. Now, we could have made it stronger, we could have made it better, and we could have worked on it. We just got the asylum case, we just saw it right there in court or right before court. We did not have them because some of our clients, having been detained, didn't have their asylum applications in their back pocket. So we were just sort of seeing these in real time, and some of them were not, in all honesty, that strong. So in any event, hearing number 1, bond denied. Hearing number 2, sir, I'm denying your bond. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to decide what you want to do. Mr. Hacking says he'll come down to court on Sunday, come down to the jail on Sunday and meet with you. You should take that opportunity to meet with him and then decide what you want to do. So that was on Wednesday. That was how the hearing went. It was a tough day, but I made a video for our team, and I said I've been really proud of the work that we've done on these cases. I also cited to our core value number 1, which is we fight for immigrants every day. And I said, what day do we fight for immigrants? And everybody said, we fight for immigrants every day. And we fight when it's hard. We fight when it's easier. We fight in immigration court. We fight in deportation. But, all of this isn't about me. And it isn't about how smart I am. And as an older attorney now, I realize something that my mentor, Susie, tried to teach me when I had my first trial case. When I had my first jury trial, I kept going back to the bench or to the desk and saying to her, how am I doing? How am I doing? And she said, it's not about you. And that's the thing. This is not about me. This is about the system. This is about when you get dragged into the deportation machine, how it's so hard to get out. This is about Trump 2025, Project 2025, and life in America with this deportation machine ramped up as much as it is. So even though all these people had asylum claims, and I believe that many of them were very good cases, the judge wasn't having any of it, especially from the people who had either committed a crime or entered as a crewman. He didn't like that, and then he didn't like the ones that were filed more than a year after arrival. So the machine is just heating up. The machine is warming up, and so I've been talking to some of my clients, and some of them have decided to take what's called voluntary departure. They don't want to sit in jail. We could appeal the bond issue. We could appeal the argument that the judge had that it's my burden, not the government's burden. We could do all that, and we could get their asylum cases ready, but that's going to cost more money. And also, this particular judge that we have, and since we didn't get out on bond, I believe that our clients would be stuck with him. He denies over 95% of the asylum cases in front of him. So these clients are facing the question, do I want to sit in jail for the next 3 or 4 months, waiting for my asylum date? Maybe it's 2 months, whatever it is. Do I want to sit in jail every day here, waiting to have my asylum case heard, when the judge has a 95% denial rate? So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I have one client, I think, that does want to fight, is very scared about going back to Indonesia. I think they're all generally scared, but they're also scared and sad about sitting in jail. And, you know, when I'm sitting in jail in the attorney room meeting with them, it's sad. It's real sad. And, you know, I took their pictures and I kept them on their file, and I think about them all the time. I've woken up every morning at some point in the night thinking about the cases, thinking about things I can do, thinking about angles that we can take, thinking about new arguments. That's how I came up with the Eighth Circuit criminal argument, which is, hey, if we're going to make criminals stay in jail only if the government proves their burden, shouldn't that be the same for immigrants, where it's civil and not supposed to be a punitive system? But in any event, that's where we are. We'll see what happens with our clients. I'll probably tell you more about this story later. But it's just an eye-opening thing as we get back into removal. You know, we were planning on only taking 2 bond cases to sort of get started on it again. But given the need and given the work that needed to be done and given the fact that we had these people that needed our help, we swung into action. I'm really proud of the work that we did. I'm very, very sad that we weren't able to get our clients out on bond. And if any of them have to go back to Indonesia, that will make me also sad. But we are here, and we keep fighting, and we're documenting the journey. We're telling you the story. We're enlightening people. And like I said, I'm sure there's going to be people on the right who voted for this, who are happy about this, who want to kick out as many people as possible, even if they have a meritorious defense, even if it means they don't get real due process, even if it means that immigration detention, jail, sitting there in a cell with other people is a hammer that we use to get people to leave the United States. So be it, says so many people, says more than 50% of the electorate. They voted for this. They voted for Donald Trump. They knew what they were getting, and this is what it has wrought. So I leave it open to you. I'm an open book. I'm telling you the whole story. I have held very little back other than some client confidential stuff, but that's what's been going on in my world since September 1st. It's been a strange month. I'm excited if we do have one client that decides to fight. We'll see, and we'll keep you posted if we try to make new law on that bond issue. I thank you for watching. I thank you for supporting this channel. I thank you for the notes of support, the comments. All of it really helps, keeps me going, keeps us going. It means a lot to us, and we'll just keep fighting for immigrants every day that ends in Y. That's what my friend David said, that we fight for immigrants every day that ends in Y, and that's exactly right. So if you need help, if you want to lose your bond hearing, call us. I'm kidding, of course. We will do our absolute best for you. We'll put you in the best position possible. Some cases, I think, are just not winnable. So we'll see. But in any event, give us a call, 314-961-8200. Email us, info@hackingimmigrationlaw.com. Be sure to join us in our Facebook group, which is Immigrant Home. We'd love to have you there. We have almost 16,000 people in there talking about the immigration and deportation process every day. We also have our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to the channel. You can turn on the alerts. Whenever we make a new video, you will be the first to know, and we would love to have you join us on our Immigration Answers Show, which you can by texting the word SHOW, SHOW, to 314-470-3300. Finally, If you aren't following us on TikTok, my daughter Noor helped me start my TikTok channel a long time ago. We're up to 120,000, 25,000 followers. We'd love to have you follow us there. We are very, very silly on TikTok. We have a lot of fun. And we will see you next time.